You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering South Dakota. So, Nora,
Yes, Lauren?
let's get scary.
Well, it has been a hot minute since we recorded.
It has been so long.
We say that every time, but this time takes the cake because it's actually been a month,
Aww.
which is insane.
It's really been so long.
Yeah, we've had a lot happen in the last month.
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have. I guess I'll go first.
Yes, go first.
So on December 18th, so first of all, we were dog sitting, and I was like, Ian, can we babysit my friend's dog on the 18th? And he was like, sure. And then so I confirmed with my friend, and he was like, wait, we can't do the 18th. We can't do that day. We're going out to dinner. I was like, yeah, I know, but like, we can like reschedule or like just leave the dogs. And he's like, no, we have to go out to dinner. And literally oblivious me had no idea what was planned. So we go to DC, and he goes, I really want to see the Lincoln Memorial. And I was like, okay. So then it starts raining, but he's like, we have to go. We have to keep walking. So we're walking in the rain. Literally, my pinky toe burst open from a blister. I know it sounds really dramatic, but I truly had no idea what was happening. And then we are taking pictures in front at the bottom of the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, which if you've been there, it's like the bottom of the steps, there's like not gravel, but like a huge cement area, and then the reflection pool. So we were standing right in front of the reflection pool. And then he looks at me and he goes, so you want to do this forever? And I was like, yes. So yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
It is so exciting.
Yeah, I would honestly, people are like, well, didn't you expect it? I mean, you guys have been together for 7 years. And I'm like, honestly, I didn't. Like, I just was so shocked. I did not expect it at that moment. Like, I knew it would happen.
He did such a good job, too, because he was always like, well, probably not anytime soon. We just bought a house.
I know. That's what I know, because we've had that talk. And so I was expecting it to be sometime next year. But I am just so excited.
And the ring is so pretty. Oh, it's so much fun. You have so many fun things coming up.
I know. I can't wait.
It's so much fun.
I know. So yeah, that happened. And then what happened with you?
Well, then I got the COVID, which was not fun. But Joe and I were fine, mainly because we have been vaccinated and I have been boosted. So go get your booster.
Yes.
And then we got a really nice snow here. And Virginia doesn't know how to deal with snow. So Joe and I lost electricity for 20 hours.
Yeah.
Our house got down to 53 degrees. It was so horrible. And from our window, we can see like our neighbors' like ceiling of their house. They had a fire going, and I was like, this is really depressing.
Are you serious?
And it's not even like we could drive to the store to get something because my car was in the garage while the garage is electric.
Oh, so you couldn't open? You were literally trapped.
Yep. Yeah.
That's insane.
Thankfully, for our wedding, on our registry, we got a portable generator. And so we were able to charge our phones.
Wow.
Because I was like, if our phones die, we are literally disconnected from the entire
that's so
world.
True. I didn't even think about the fact that you were still like texting us updates literally 20 hours later.
Yeah. It was, I wasn't on my phone like at all.
Right.
But yeah, great fun.
Wow.
And then, we had the I-95 thing.
Oh, yeah, which is like right in our neck of the woods, kind of.
Yeah, I take 95 to get to work sometimes.
Yeah.
And it backed up. I read somewhere from D.C. all the way down to like Kings Dominion, which is a good like hour and a half from Northern Virginia. The roads were backed up and people were stuck in their car on a major highway for 20 plus hours.
Even our governor, or Tim Kaine, our senator, I think he's our senator. Don't at me.
One of the high up people got stuck too.
He got stuck.
It was just so horrible.
Yeah.
And so now the stores up here have no produce. It's just a whole thing.
Yeah, so you look at the grocery stores right now, you go into the store, there's no produce, nothing fresh, like everything's sold out. So hopefully it'll be restocked soon, but the supply chains, it's a double whammy with Omicron and I-95. It's like the worst possible, mix. So hopefully we'll get some food up here soon.
Yeah. We had to throw out so much food.
Oh,
it sucked because it was in our fridge, but like it just wasn't cold. It was cold. It was too cold to live in, but it was not cold enough to like keep the food good.
Yeah.
And so after 20 hours, I'm not going to like, risk it eating mayonnaise or something. I'm like super weird about food and leftovers. So I'm like, we're tossing it all.
I am too. Like if something's even expired by like a day or two, I don't eat it.
Oh, I don't either.
And I got really bad food poisoning when I was like 20.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I swore to myself as I was getting sick, I was like, I will never, ever eat expired food, ever. And I promised myself that, and I stuck with it. So I get that.
And like I opened our fridge because we had, or not our fridge, our freezer, because we had like chicken in there. And I opened it and there was just a smell. And I was like, nope,
Absolutely
tossing
not.
all of it.
Especially chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I'm not risking any of this.
Yeah.
So, okay. You remember that creepy story I had to tell you?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know what I covered in the last episode when I did it by myself with Joe?
Yes.
I'm not going to say the name because I'm too scared now.
Don't say it, yeah.
So, how Joe and I do our nightly routine. So we recorded that episode that day. I sent it to you. We got it all ready to go. And it was like probably 11 midnight. Our sleep schedule got so messed up. But so how we do it is Joe will take Roy out and I'll go to the bathroom. I'll get ready. I'll wash my face, get ready for bed. So I heard the front door like open and close, open and close. And I was like, what is happening? So I come out and Joe was in and he was like kind of out of breath. And like Roy was still in his harness. And I was like, what is going on? So I take Roy out of the harness and Joe's like, Lauren, I'm freaked out. And like it takes a lot to freak Joe out. And I was like, why, what happened? So he went out of our back door. So our back door, there are a set of stairs and you kind of walk around to get to the second set of stairs. It's like outside like your typical apartment complex.
Yeah.
So he said he stepped out, he went down the first couple stairs, and he heard a kid's voice say hi, then something that he couldn't understand. But it wasn't like a cheerful kid's voice. It was like a very monotone, like, hi, so-and-so. Like he said it was like a very, very chilling voice. And so he's like, nope. And he turned right back around, came right back inside and went out our other front door.
Yeah.
And he was like, after what we covered and hearing that voice, he's like, I'm not going outside for the rest of the night.
Oh, God.
So he like, usually when we take Roy out at night, we'll take him out, walk him around a little bit. Joe was like, nope, I took him. He went to the bathroom. We came right back inside. And then that made me think, because like the creepy figure that I covered last week that I'm not going to talk about again, it mimics people's voices to get you to come to them, or they'll mimic voices of like people in like danger or who need help. Oh my God. And then I had like a super creepy feeling, and then we turned off the lights and I got really, really scared. And I was like, Joe, never. It was so creepy.
Ellie and I, my dog, we got scared last night because it sounded like a tree fell right outside of our house. And she jumped up, I jumped up, I made Ian come downstairs. I legit thought that a tree fell. And I was scared to see like the damage.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a bunch of ice falling off our roof.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know what it was at first, but I was super scared.
The icicles are so freaky.
I know, they are. They
I walked
truly
out
are.
of my house to go to work the other day, and I heard like this big bang, and I was like, what was that? And I looked around, there was no one. I was like, it was probably an icicle.
The Big Bang Theory, huh?
The Big Bang. But what's funny is that The Office, always related to The Office.
Yeah.
Dwight talks about how he's afraid for Michael because Michael likes to look up at the icicles. And Dwight's like, can you do it from a different angle? And Michael's like, no, I like how they look standing right under them. It just makes me laugh.
I love that show.
He's like, one day he's going to get impaled. Oh, for Christmas, Joe got me an Office trivia game.
Oh my, you're going to win. I'm not playing that with you.
I'm so excited. I read a couple of the cards and I was like, ooh, I got this.
That's hilarious.
So I think those are our life updates. Do you want to give the update about the show?
Yeah, so we're going to be changing up our schedule a little bit. So instead of releasing a new episode every Wednesday, we're going to be releasing every other Wednesday. And we're hoping that if we get enough listener stories, we can start releasing listener stories on the Wednesdays that we're not releasing our normal episodes. So please send in your listener stories. It would be awesome.
Have your friends send them. Have your family send them. Just tell the world.
Even if like you know of one, send it to us.
Yeah.
Like if you know it well and you're able to give details, like we want to hear it.
Yeah, if it's like a really, really long story, if it's a really short story, we don't care. We want them all.
Yeah, definitely. So we think this will be good because then we'll have enough time to like really work on the merch and Patreon and just kind of like grow the podcast. So yeah.
Which we're really excited about. So because both Nora and I work full time, we were like we want to increase the podcast, and the only way we can do that is to make some changes somewhere.
Yeah.
So for the meantime, this is what we're going to do, and hopefully we get some really cool merch out to you guys.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And thank you guys for those who have given us feedback on what merch they want. Because we're definitely going to take that into consideration.
Oh yes. Yeah. We have a lot of really fun ideas.
Yeah.
All right.
So we had a serial killer. You want to talk about it?
Did. Yes. Okay. So in Northern Virginia, you have probably heard about the shopping cart killer. So a little background on the shopping cart killer, the serial killer, literally in Loudoun County. So on December 15th, 2 bodies were found in the Fairfax County portion of Alexandria. And that area is 15 minutes from us. Like 15 minutes from where I live.
Yep.
4.5 miles, by the way. So they were found in a container. Police believed that they had the suspect in custody at this point because the bodies of 2 other women had been found in the Shenandoah Valley a month prior. The Shenandoah Valley being Harrisonburg, being where Nora and I went to college.
Yeah. Rip. That means he could have been there when we were in college.
Yes.
For sure.
So the one responsible for this, the one in custody, was 35-year-old Washington, D.C. resident Anthony Robinson. So Robinson became known as the shopping cart killer because this is how he would transport the bodies of his victims in a shopping cart. So Robinson had been arrested on November 23rd in Harrisonburg, Virginia, based on video surveillance and cell phone records that were used to connect him to the 2 victims found in Harrisonburg. Police believe that there have been even more victims of this horrible man in addition to the 4 that we are already aware of. So what I have gathered is what he would do is he would meet women on a dating app. They would go to a hotel together where Robinson would then kill them. One of the main hotels he frequented was the Moon Inn Hotel in Fairfax, Virginia, which, like I said, is within like 5 miles of where I live.
Yeah, way too close.
Yes. So literally, okay, I was doing notes the other night. I'm sitting on the couch. I had watched Jeopardy because it makes me feel smart sometimes. And right after that, they're like, oh, next up. And it was a news story. So a news story was coming up that night. I didn't watch it, but there was one that said that they may have connected a 5th victim to the shopping cart killer.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So far, he's being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of disposing the bodies of the 2 female victims. So those 2 female victims had been found in the vacant lot in Harrisonburg. Their bodies were found with blunt force trauma. Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis said, quote, after he inflicts trauma to his victims and kills them, he transports their bodies to their final resting place, literally in a shopping cart, and there's video to this effect. Robinson has also lived in many different locations to include Maryland and New York, so police are currently trying to see if there are any other victims in those 2 states, like back, like months, years, whatever ago. Davis also said, quote, we need to act right now with our law enforcement partners to figure out who else our killer has had contact with and what's his MO. Dating sites, motels, blunt force trauma, shopping cart, final resting place. He's killed 4 already, and we suspect that he has more victims. So they're urging anyone with information to contact their Major Crimes Bureau at 703-246-7800. So if you have any information, tell the police. This is, honestly crazy.
Yeah, and it's crazy, too, because, yes, we know who did it. He's in custody. The search for him is over, but the search for all of his victims is not over.
Yes.
I truly believe that there's more people.
There has to be. There's no way that someone just... and they say it in a ton of shows, too. There's no way you just start off by murdering someone. There's little things that lead up to it. So there has to have been little things that led up to it. And then there's the murders. And if he already had this MO, there has to be other people connected to it.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because I didn't read about all of his victims, but I read that 1 or 2 of them were homeless or had some mental impairments. So clearly he was taking advantage of that, which is so sad. So hopefully everything gets figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So for North Dakota, am I going to go first? Or
South Dakota?
That is what I meant. South Dakota.
Well, let me do the state facts.
Oh my gosh. Why do we always forget something?
It's okay.
We just had so much information
I know,
today.
we truly did. Okay. So South Dakota, nicknamed the Mount Rushmore state. Both North and South Dakota joined the Union and began 2 separate states on November 2nd, 1889. Became 2 separate states on November 2nd, 1889. After this split, North Dakota became the 39th state and South Dakota became the 40th state, naturally. South Dakota got its name from the Sioux word friends or allies, which I love that.
Yeah.
Because, that makes sense. Wait, that's kind of cool because then, you know how people will be named Dakota? Their name is a really good meaning. I like that.
Oh, that's cute.
So some weird laws in South Dakota. Horses are not allowed in fountains unless they're wearing pants.
Okay, if a horse wears pants, do you think they would wear it on their 2 back legs? Or do you think they would wear it underneath covering all 4 of their legs?
I would say back legs.
That's what I would say too. I'll show you a picture afterwards of the reason why I'm thinking this.
I like where your brain's at.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you guys think?
I know. I want to know. Comment below. It's illegal to cause static in Huron. Every hotel in South Dakota is required to have 2 twin beds, and those twin beds must always be 2 feet apart. That's no fun.
That's weird.
Yeah. Don't fall asleep in a cheese factory because that's illegal.
Aw. Are there a lot of cheese factories?
I guess it's kind of close to Wisconsin.
Kinda.
But maybe like someone fell asleep and got like grinded up in the cheese.
Ooh, see, that would be the dark side probably.
Yeah. Mount Rushmore is located in South Dakota. It took 14 years to construct and more than $1 million.
Jeez.
Yeah. Today, that would be more than 17 million.
Jeez.
Which Mount Rushmore is massive, but that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. In 1943, the temperature went from -4 degrees to 49 degrees in 2 minutes in the Black Hills region.
Ew.
I will never complain about the weather changes here ever again after that. I mean, it was literally like 70 degrees here, and then it snowed the next day.
Yeah.
But I said I wouldn't complain, so I'm not complaining.
I digress.
Yeah. In South Dakota, you're allowed to start driving at the age of 14.
Interesting.
I mean, there's like not much on the roads there, so I can see why that's allowed.
Yep.
South Dakota has more shoreline than Florida. This is because of Lake Oahe and the Missouri River.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Belle Fourche, that's how you would say it, right?
I don't know.
Fourche. Belle Fourche is the geographic center of all 50 U.S. states, which is really weird to think about.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because you have to think there's Alaska way up there.
Yep, that's very true. The Badlands are located in South Dakota. It sounds creepy, but it's just a type of dry terrain.
Because you think like, oh, I'm going into the Badlands.
South Dakota has a ton of creepy and eerie ghost towns. There's a whole list of these ghost towns that also lists if the town is barren, neglected, or abandoned, each with a definition of how a town would qualify to fall under like that specific category.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to own a whole town?
Yes.
Well, you could own a whole town, abandoned town, of Sweat for just $250,000.
Ew, where
That's
do you
what
live,
it's called.
Sweat?
I know.
Gross.
It includes a supposedly haunted house, an empty shop, and a bar. So that's it. That's the town.
I guess.
Wow.
We could, if all of us throw in $5, we can own a town. It'll be the scary
Wow.
state town of Sweat.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That would actually
we
be
could have
pretty cool.
live shows there.
Come to South Dakota, the abandoned town of Sweat.
All right. So, Lauren, what are you going to tell us about?
All right, now on to
Yeah.
this. All right, so this one isn't a very long case, but it was a very interesting case, so I wanted to cover it. But as I got into it, I realized there just wasn't that much on it, but it was cool. So here we go.
Cool.
So this is the unsolved mystery of Tina Marcotte. So 1994 was designated as the International Year of the Family and the International Year of Sport and the Olympic Ideal by the United Nations. This was the year that OJ fled the police in his iconic white Ford Bronco. This is the year that The Lion King was released. And most important, it was the year I was born.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Thank you. But it was also in June of this year that within the span of 5 days, a resident of South Dakota went missing and another was found dead.
Oh.
So Tina Marie Marcotte was born on December 13th, 1963 in Manchester, New Hampshire to parents Robert Marcotte and Joyce Ann Hartz. So not too much is known about Tina's early years or much about her other than the fact that she spent a lot of her time in Londonderry and Manchester, both in New Hampshire area. Mm-hmm. Tina worked the late shift as a forest product distributor at Black Hills Molding in Rapid City, South Dakota, which is a wood processing plant. So on Friday, June 24th, 1994, Tina finished her late shift and started to make her way home. But when she got to her car, which was parked in the parking lot, she noticed that her tire was completely and hopelessly flat. At 12:30 a.m., Tina didn't know what to do, so she called her best friend, Vicki Riddle, from the phone at her building. Riddle had been sleeping when the call came in, but she woke up and answered it.
Wait, isn't it funny how, like, we call our friend who probably has no idea what to do?
Yeah.
Like, one time my car was breaking down and I called my friend Katie, and, like, in hindsight, I'm like, why did I do that?
I know, you're like, I don't know what to do, and they're like,
Yeah.
I don't either.
I know.
It's like, well, at least you know where I am.
It's a blind lead in the blind.
Oh, seriously. So Riddle recalls that Tina was really upset about her tire, telling her that it was completely flat and she was essentially stuck at work now and had no way to get home. Tina asked Vicki if she would be able to come pick her up as she had no other way home. Vicki obviously agreed and told Tina that she would get dressed and be on her way. But before they said goodbye and before Vicki could come pick up Tina, Tina told Vicki that a car had just pulled into the factory parking lot and she was going to see who it was. She set down the phone and went to see who had just pulled into the parking lot. After waiting a little bit, Tina came back on the line and told Vicky that she wouldn't need her to pick her up anymore, as her coworker Tom had offered to give her a ride home. Tina apologized again for waking Vicky up and bothering her, thanked her, then hung up the phone. This would be the last time that anyone spoke to Tina. The next morning, being a good friend, Vicky called Tina's house to make sure that she had made it home all right. Patrick Gleason, Tina's boyfriend of 11 years and father to her 3 children, answered the phone. He had just woken up when he answered the phone and informed Vicky that Tina had not come home the night before, but he wasn't too worried, though, as he was sure she would be back soon. Well, that's when Vicky told Patrick about the phone call the previous night. She mentioned that someone who Tina worked with named Tom had offered to drive her home. The only Tom who had worked at the factory was a man named Tom Cooter, so Patrick called him to ask about Tina. Tom agreed that he would talk to Patrick about the night before at Vicky's house. So Tom Cooter was born in January 1965 and had been a forklift driver at the Black Hills Molding Company where Tina worked. So Patrick and Tom show up at Vicky's house to try to figure out where Tina could possibly be. According to Vicky, during their discussion, Tom became very defensive when Vicky brought up the phone call she received from Tina just the night before. The one where Tina had said that Tom was in the parking lot and had offered to give her a ride. Well, Tom denied that he had been at the factory that night and denied that he had given Tina a ride home.
Okay, he's better off saying, like, yeah, I saw her, but I dropped her off.
Right? So what Vicky said about this interaction, quote, Tom tried to say that I was drunk and wouldn't know Tom from Ron. And then I said, well, she said Tom, the one that used to work here. And then we started talking about that. And Tom finally admitted that he was the only Tom he had ever known that worked there. He was just glaring at me and not acting himself, end quote. Patrick then asked Tom if he was having an affair with Tina, which Tom calmly denied. Patrick found this passive denial to be uncharacteristic of Tom. So he said, quote, that right there didn't seem right to me because the way Tom was. If you tried to blame him for something that he didn't have anything to do with, he would have started fighting with me. That's the type of person he was, end quote. So knowing they were getting nowhere, Tom actually suggested that he and Patrick head to the police station to file a missing persons report for Tina. So it just sounds kind of weird. And I tried to see, like, more if there was any reason why Patrick was like, oh, are you having an affair? Couldn't find anything anywhere about why he would have thought that.
Yeah, that's super weird.
Yeah.
Or why her husband didn't call the police when she didn't come home before bed. Like, was it normal for
Like, I know
her?
she works late and she would usually get home late, but at the same time, like, if I woke up in the morning and my partner's not in bed with me, like,
Red flags.
I'm gonna freak out.
Yeah.
So the police began an investigation, which obviously led them to where Tina had last claimed to be, at her place of employment in the Black Hills Molding parking lot. So police found her car still in the parking lot with a flat tire, but it didn't appear to just casually be flat. It appeared to have been slashed with a knife. So police immediately started to look at this as a case involving foul play and even murder. A slashed tire could never lead to anything good. So obviously, Tom's name was put forward and he was asked to come in for questioning, which he actually did voluntarily. He went to the police station, was asked the usual questions, and was asked to explain where he was the night that Tina went missing. Again, he was asked if he had given Tina a ride home the other night, and again, he denied it. So Tom claimed that he had an alibi. He had been playing softball on the night in question and had given his friend a ride home. He dropped his friend off, and as he was heading back to his place, his car broke down.
Oh.
So he said that he spent the next 3.5 hours under a streetlight on the side of the road trying to fix his car, all by himself.
Huh.
All by himself. Finally, he got it working and didn't arrive back to his house until 3:30 a.m. Wow. He had a wife, Nancy, and 2 children at home who had been sleeping. He said he didn't call home to inform his wife of his car troubles and that he would be home late because he didn't want to wake his family. He's such a thoughtful guy.
How considerate.
So the cops followed up on this alibi that Tom had provided, and it was confirmed by a few teammates that he had played at the softball game, which had ended around 11 p.m. His friend also did confirm that Tom had given a ride home and that he had been dropped off at 11:30 p.m. So everything up to 11:30 p.m.'s fine, sitting straight. During interrogation, they asked Tom to point out on a map exactly where his car had broken down. They did this so they could canvass the neighborhood and see if anyone at all had been outside around the time when Tom said he was fixing his tire, as a way to confirm this alibi of him being alone on the side of the road until 3 in the morning.
Right, because that's like not really an alibi right now.
Exactly. But they were unable to find anyone who could corroborate his story or confirm his alibi. So after hearing Tom's story, they knew that something just wasn't adding up. Nancy, Tom's wife, was also interviewed. She claimed that right when Tom got home, he had immediately washed all of his softball clothes, including his shoes and his shoelaces. So much for not wanting to wake up that family.
Right.
And the fact that he immediately washed all of his clothes, to include his shoelaces, struck the police as weird.
Especially, like, washing your shoes is very loud.
And your shoelaces.
Yeah, that's so particular.
I don't think I've ever washed my shoelaces.
Yeah.
I've also never really washed my shoes, so that could be a thing, too.
I sometimes, when my shoes are stinky, I do. But I don't do it when people are, like, going to bed because it's loud.
Exactly. You're going to have them thumping around in there.
Yeah.
So the police were suspicious of Tom and how his story just wasn't adding up, so another interview was scheduled for a few days out. 2 days later, just 1 day before their scheduled meeting with Tom, the cops must have received a search warrant for Tom's car because they searched it. In his car, they found blood. They sent the blood out to the labs, but those results have never been revealed. Even these almost 30 years later, never been revealed.
That is so annoying.
But just the next day, on a warm summer morning around 9 a.m., during the shift change at the lumberyard, several employees discovered Tom's lifeless body. His head had been crushed under the rear wheel of his forklift. Had his death been an accident, or was it something much more sinister? So clearly his death was investigated.
Right.
Police ultimately ruled his death as a suicide rather than as an accident. They said that they found nothing at the crime scene to indicate that there had been a struggle, which there would have been if this had been an accident. They also said that the absence of drag marks indicated that he purposely placed himself in the path of the machine. So this is what the police believe happened. They believe that Tom had been the one to slash Tina's tire in the parking lot on June 24th, which would have prevented her from being able to leave.
How did he know where she was?
Well, she knew he worked, like they know they worked there because he used to work there with her.
Okay,
so she probably.
So he knew to wait. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
He knew she would be working the late shift. She knew she would have to get into her car to go home.
Yeah.
So this would have been the perfect opportunity for Tom to swing in and offer Tina a ride home. So once she was in his car, the police believed that he made sexual advances towards Tina, which she rejected. So this is what prompted him to murder her. His plan didn't go quite as planned, though. He didn't expect Tina to be on the phone when he arrived. But when Tina had called Vicky and had mentioned Tom had offered to drive her home, that led to him being named a suspect in the case. The police believed that Tom felt law enforcement closing in on him, so they had a meeting scheduled the next day to talk to him. His car had been searched, and so he killed himself in such a bizarre way in an attempt to make it look like it was a horrible accident that had occurred. So not suicide, but an accident. They believed he wanted it to look like an accident because if it were, his wife would receive a large amount of money from his life insurance policy.
I was going to say, that's a life insurance thing.
Yep.
Some policies don't give any money if it's suicide.
Yep. And with this insurance policy, if he had committed suicide, his wife would have received nothing.
Yeah.
So police believed he wanted his death to look like an accident. They surmised that he loaded at least a ton of lumber onto the forklift, but he had loaded it at an incline to make it appear as if it had fallen on him. But he must have changed his mind and instead positioned himself in the path of the forklift, sent the lift to move forward, positioned himself in the path of the wheels, and that was that. Val Farmer, a clinical psychologist, doesn't believe that it was suicide due to the lack of suicidal behavior or thinking or thought processes or emotions. He just kept going on and on and on about why he didn't believe it was a suicide.
But you don't know how someone's going to react when they're convicted of murder.
Right.
Or when they're being accused of it.
You're a clinical psychologist. Like, you didn't really know him.
Yeah.
So it
that's
was
like
just,
such a general...
He just like kept going on and on. I was like, okay, sir. Okay, Mr. Val Farmer. I understand what you're saying. So 16 months later, in October 1995, Tina's body was found on the property of where she worked, under some wood piles. Her cause of death was due to a blow to the head by a heavy object. But a court did not confirm the police's determination because 4.5 years later, in 2000, Nancy, Tom's widow, ended up receiving his insurance death benefits after a judge ruled that there was no strong evidence to prove that Tom had committed suicide. Then, in 2016, the Rapid City Police closed their investigation into the two deaths of Tina Marcotte and Tom Cooter. Though this goes against the judge's findings, the official ruling was that Tom had murdered Tina, then had committed suicide due to the guilt he had felt from what he had done. Nancy, Tom's wife, truly believes that he didn't kill himself. She said that Tom would never do that to her and the kids. She also doesn't believe Tom is responsible for what happened to Tina. Nancy believes that someone attacked Tom in that lumberyard. She had no idea who it could have been, though, or what their motive would have been. She then believes that that person crushed Tom beneath the wheels of his own forklift. She stands by her husband and stands by the fact that someone killed him. She is upset that the case is closed, as she wishes the police would do more and investigate her husband's death as a murder, not a suicide. Nancy also said that there are leads that haven't been followed up on. Don't know what those leads are? So you can watch the episode about this case on Unsolved Mysteries at the beginning of Season 8, Episode 7.
Wow.
So that is the mystery of Tina Marcotte. And the reason I picked it was because, you know, she went missing, and then he died, and then her body was found.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a weird string of events.
Yeah, and it's also super strange that they never released the blood sample or the blood results. I mean, part of me was like, well, maybe they never tested it because they pretty much knew it was him, so they just didn't want to go through that process.
Well, I think they also wanted to see, because the blood was found in his car, so I think they wanted to see if it was Tina's blood.
Right.
To see, like, she had in fact been in this car, she had in fact been bleeding in this car.
Yeah.
You know, it's just weird.
It's just so weird that they didn't.
And it felt like such a big thing because, like I told you before, I watched, like, the Unsolved Mysteries of this, and it was just the one short segment at, like, the beginning of the episode. And I was like, this is all I can find on this case?
Yeah, that's...
Like, you would think there would be more, especially with Nancy saying things like, oh, there are other leads that they're just not tracking down. And it's like, well, what are those leads?
Yeah, what are they?
It's just a very weird case.
That is.
So what do you have for us, Nora?
Okay, so have you ever heard of Robert Leroy Anderson?
See, it sounded like a familiar name.
That's what I
but
thought.
I don't know why.
I know. So
because I don't know who that is.
Yeah, so I saw the name. I'm like, oh, I know that case. And then I started reading and I was like, wait, I don't know that case.
I legitimately, okay, so Nora and I have an Excel spreadsheet where we put all the cases that we're going to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I legit looked back through it and I was like, why does this name sound so familiar?
Yeah, I know.
But
so,
no, never heard of him.
I know, it's crazy. Well, before I dive in, shout out to Rachel Bell from crimelibrary.com because she did awesome research and a lot of like her articles, I used them for this story. Mm-hmm. So of course she'll be linked in our works cited, in our show notes. So if you want to read more, definitely check out her articles. But this story starts with a woman named Piper Potts.
Piper Potts.
Yep.
I actually really like the name Piper.
I do too. I love that name.
Yeah.
Love it. Piper was an attractive young woman who was originally from Texas but moved to Oregon after high school for Bible college. She met her future husband, Vance Strahl, at that Bible college. They married in 1988 when Piper was only 20 years old. Her and her husband were deeply religious, so it made sense for their relationship to get married early. Mm-hmm. 3 years later, the couple moved to a trailer located on 40 acres in Canastota, South Dakota, which is really fun to say.
Yeah.
Canastota, South Dakota. Canastota is a rural community located about 20 miles west of Sioux Falls.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, the Strahls were a deeply religious couple who had a dream of having their own part-time ministry. That dream soon became a reality when they opened the Prairie View Bible Camp for children. The camp was actually on their property, and from the road, passing motorists could see the pews that they set up in their yard.
Okay.
Excuse me.
We're sounding wholesome.
Yeah. And probably saved a ton of money having it like on their property.
Yeah, definitely.
So fast forward a few years.
Wait, I'm sorry. When is this happening? What year are we in?
So this happened in they got married in 88.
Okay.
So this is like now the early 90s.
Okay.
So fast forward a few years. Piper's now 28 and Vance is 29. The Strahls now have 2 children, Shayna and Nathan, who were only a year apart in age.
Jeez.
Yeah. Shayna's 3 years old and Nathan's only 2. Nathan's second birthday fell on Monday, July 29th, 1996, and the Strahl family planned to celebrate Nathan's birthday later that evening. On that Monday, at about 6:30 a.m., their dad Vance drove to his plumbing job as usual. His main job was as a plumber because the Bible camp alone didn't pay the bills. Mm-hmm. Piper normally would have left a short time later to take her children to the babysitter on the way to her job, which was at the Southeastern Children's Center in Sioux Falls. And she even called the babysitter, Mrs. Jordanson, at 9:20 to say that they were on their way.
Okay.
But tragically, Piper never arrived at Mrs. Jordanson's house or at her job. Somehow, her children knew something was wrong and called home around noon and left a message on the answering machine. His message was short, and he said, "Honey, where are you?" After 3 p.m., and multiple hours of not being able to reach his wife, Vance asked Patty Sinclair, who worked with Piper at the daycare facility, to try calling the home phone. But their 3-year-old daughter, Shayna, answered the phone instead. Mm-hmm. On the phone, she blurted, quote, "I don't want mommy to die. I don't want my daddy to die." And then she added, "They're probably killed."
Would a 3-year-old even know what any of that means?
I don't know.
Huh.
I mean, she probably was just like,
yeah,
alone for a few hours and just freaking out.
Yeah.
Patty was obviously stunned and directed a coworker to call the McCook County Sheriff's Office while she redialed the Strahl's number. Patty spoke with Shayna again, but this time she was able to keep Shayna on the phone for nearly 45 minutes.
Get a little kid talking.
I know, right? Until Sheriff Gene Taylor arrived at the trailer. By now, it was after 5 p.m., so like 8 hours of Piper not being accounted for, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the 2 babies, that means the 2 babies had been alone for at least 8 hours. When Sheriff Taylor arrived, the front door was wide open. Sheriff Taylor found the children and the family dog, a blonde Labrador named Chase, but no sign of Piper. One thing that was clear, though, from the moment he walked in, was that the trailer was in complete disarray. The contents of Piper's purse were strewn on the floor along with other household items. Sheriff Taylor went towards the rear of the trailer to the bedroom where he found Shayna unharmed but crying. She was a little older, so she probably knew that something scary had just happened. 2-year-old Nathan, who was also unharmed, walked around in a dazed state, not making a sound. Luckily, the children did not appear to have been physically harmed, but Piper was still nowhere to be found.
Jeez.
Yeah. Shayna told Sheriff Taylor, quote, "Mommy's gonna die," end quote. So that's like basically what she's been saying this whole time.
Yeah, that just shocks me that a little kid is able to pick up a concept like that, because usually they don't, you know?
Yeah.
It takes them until they're like, 6 or 7 until they can actually grasp like the concept of death, and even then they don't even know what it is. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I wonder if it has to do with them being like more religious. Maybe it's talked about.
Maybe. Oh, that's a good point.
Know?
That's a really good point.
But I don't know. Or maybe she's just like really quick for her age.
Maybe.
I don't know, but I agree.
Or it's something that she's heard her parents say before.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
Because little kids are sponges.
Yep, that's very true. Sheriff Taylor was with a man named Jim Stevenson, who was a South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation, or DCI, agent. The two men knew that they had to patiently talk to Shayna because the more time that passed, the less she would remember. Patiently, the two men extracted the 3-year-old's account of what happened. Shayna described the person as, quote, "a mean man who drove a black vehicle with black wheels and came to the trailer and grabbed my mother," end quote.
This just sounds like a lot for a 3-year-old. I don't know.
Yeah.
That part's just really throwing me off.
It does. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe she was like closer to 4.
I don't know, because I've babysat like a 2, almost 3-year-old, and when he was tired, he said, "tired," and lay down in my lap.
I was going to say, like, I think kids are barely talking at 3 from what I thought. But
They're in their babbling state where like they're not making like, they're making sentences, but they are making sentences of things they know, like I'm hungry, things like that, but they're not making like, I don't think a 3-year-old would be able to recall a scary man came in and he had a black car and there are black tires. I don't know, it just sounds very weird to me.
I know, it does. But she did remember that there was a lot of yelling and that the man shot a gun. So maybe she had seen the gun. Maybe she heard the man say, like, "I'm going to kill you" or something. So she picked up on that. I don't know. But their mother told them to run and hide. So, which is crazy that they were able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but they ran and hid, I guess. And she
Especially
also,
like a 2-year-old, because aren't you just starting to walk around like 1 or 2?
Exactly. Well, you're walking by 1. So maybe Shayna like grabbed her brother's hand.
I don't know.
This is like speculation.
Yeah.
But Shayna also said that the man had taken Nathan's blue tent, a birthday present that he had received the evening before. As Shayna recounted the fragmented story, so maybe it was like a little like they're just trying to like ask her questions like, what color was his car? Well, what did he say?
Or it could have been a thing like, was it a red car? No. Was it a blue car?
Right,
No.
yeah.
You know?
Which I don't know how reliable that would be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But as Shayna recounted the fragmented story, her father arrived home. Sobbing in his arms, she blurted out that the man had taken Nathan's tent. Choking back his own tears, Vance reassured his daughter that it was okay that they had another tent. Internally, he was freaking out because he quickly realized that his wife had been abducted and that his kids had seen it happen. Shayna was insistent that her mother was going to die, saying she's not coming back, which that is a big concept for a little kid to see. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
It would be more like, where's mommy? You know, something like that. The pair began their investigation right away. The investigation quickly turned up several witnesses who reported seeing a truck or sports utility vehicle which was painted a flat black color in the vicinity of the Strales residence that day. One couple who lived in the area saw a nervous young man in jeans and a baseball cap walking from the trailer to a black Ford Bronco parked in the driveway. The other witness was a highway worker who told investigators that he saw a black Bronco several times throughout the day.
Okay. That's more reliable.
Yeah, exactly. The neighbor who I mentioned saw the black Bronco also told investigators that after witnessing the black Bronco, they noticed, quote, Shayna and Nathan standing alone by the roadside looking upset, end quote. And I was like, I'm sorry, but you see 2 children in your neighborhood alone outside,
right?
And you're just gonna drive by?
Right.
Like, what?
It's like, oh, I bet they're fine.
I know.
Like,
and
no.
I know. And it's like, I tried really hard to see like okay, maybe something, but it's like, no, there's no excuse for that. Like, they are
At least call the
little
cops.
kids.
Because I mean, I know personally I wouldn't stop.
I wouldn't
being
either.
a single female, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But I would 100% call the cops and be like, this
Exactly.
is what I saw. Like, I'm not stopping for my own safety, but you
Right.
should.
At least to do a welfare check.
Yeah.
Like, do something. But to just ignore it and then later on you're being investigated, like, well, asked questions, like, that's just crazy. So authorities now had a description of the man in his car, but unfortunately they had nothing substantial to go on until late in the evening of July 29th, so that same day. Vance suddenly recalled a visit to the trailer 3 days earlier by a chubby, balding stranger in his mid-20s. The man said that his name was Rob Anderson. Vance notified the police of the visitor a few days earlier and added that Anderson was an affable guy who had a limp handshake. He had driven up in a black Bronco around 7:30 a.m. the previous Friday, and at first he didn't seem to know what he wanted to say. He seemed surprised that Vance was home and mumbled something about having driven by the house several times over the past few months.
And what's funny with the limp handshake, like, if someone gives you a limp handshake, you really do remember that forever.
Yeah, for sure.
I met this guy. He gave Joe, like, a solid handshake. This was when handshaking was, like, a normal thing before COVID. And then he gave me a handshake, and he literally, here, give me your hand. He went like this.
Oh my gosh.
With his hand. And I was like, ew. He like flipped his wrist up and it just felt like a limp like fish in my hand. I was like, why
like you were taking his hand in marriage.
Right? Like, why do you give the man a good handshake?
Yeah.
Just because I'm a female doesn't mean I don't have a good handshake.
Well, I like read somewhere once that women tend to give weaker handshakes. So ever since I read that, I like always give a firm handshake.
Oh, I do too.
It's like a thing that I just do.
But the funny thing is, like, you know, you do usually do the like one like shake. Well, when people do more shakes, I'll do the one firm one and then my hand goes.
I know. I'm like, what is this?
More?
Freaking, you know how like at church, like when I went to church growing up, you would like shake the person's hand next to you during like peace, I forget.
Yeah.
And it's like that's like the long handshake, but that should not happen, I feel like, regularly because it's weird.
So yeah. Because when I was a background investigator, I would like meet people, so I would shake their hand when I was introducing myself. And yeah, I'd be the first strong, firm one, and then if they kept going, my hand would just go like, because I wasn't expecting more.
You should be like, are we holding hands?
Like, where are we going? What are we?
I know. But anywho, so it seems like a huge major red flags. Rob's brief introduction with Vance 3 days prior was interrupted when Piper walked through the front door. Anderson inquired about enrolling his children in the Bible camp that the family ran, so that was his excuse for driving by. It was the perfect cover-up.
I mean...
And they probably have had that happen before.
Yeah.
So he could have easily said he was like contemplating enrolling his kids.
Yeah, I mean, very easy reasoning.
Yeah, and Vance told Rob that the camp had closed for the year, but that they would be glad to add his name to the list for 1997. So Rob wrote his name and phone number on a piece of paper and left. By the way, our cases are like the same time.
Yeah, I noticed that.
The morning after the murder, investigators had fully identified the Strales visitor as Robert Leroy Anderson, a 26-year-old high school dropout and twice married father of 4 who lived in Sioux Falls. Anderson worked as a maintenance man on the 11 to 7:30 a.m. shift, so overnight.
Oh my gosh, that's like overnight shift too. Okay.
At John Morrill and Company, which is a Sioux Falls meatpacking plant. So a little different.
Yeah, but still like a factory, a packaging plant.
Yeah. DCI Assistant Director Bob Grandpré and other law enforcement officers went to Anderson's house where they awakened him and said that they needed to speak with him. Rob pulled on his jeans, a t-shirt, and his baseball hat and voluntarily drove to the local police station. An investigative team searched the Bronco and his home while Anderson underwent a 7-hour interrogation.
Oh.
Yeah. Beneath the carpeting in the Bronco's cargo area, officers found a plywood platform with holes drilled in it, each obviously designed to accommodate wrist or ankle restraints.
Oh no.
Yeah. A toolbox containing chains and wooden dowels were also found in the vehicle, as were traces of black water-based paint and partial roll of duct tape.
All not things to have in your trunk at the same time.
Yeah.
Not things to have ever, but things to have at the same time. Suspicious.
Right. The combination is just...
Yeah.
Dog hairs similar to those of Strales' family dog were also recovered, along with some furniture moving straps. But like a true psychopath, Rob remained calm back in the interrogation room, denying any knowledge of Piper Strayle's fate or whereabouts, but did concede that he had visited the Strayles' trailer the previous Friday morning. After some back and forth, he also admitted that he had returned on Monday. So he literally placed himself on the crime scene.
Yeah.
He said that he had come back because he wanted to use the Strayles' archery range. So you wanted to go to a basically stranger's house and use their archery range? Like, could you think of anything better?
That's weird.
Yeah. So he claims that he knocked on the door, but there was no answer. And he said he could hear children playing inside and assumed that Piper was taking a nap, so he left.
Okay.
So weird.
Yeah.
The conversation touched on topics as diverse as Rob's childhood speech impediment and the unsolved disappearance of another local woman, Larissa Demansky. Mrs. Demansky was a 29-year-old Morrill employee who had vanished from the meatpacking company's parking lot 2 years earlier. Anderson denied any knowledge of her disappearance. Meanwhile, investigators were still hard at work searching through Rob's belongings in his trailer in Sioux Falls. They found a pair of his blue jeans in the laundry area, which were stained inside with both blood and semen. Yeah. The jeans were taken to a police lab and analyzed, and they found that the DNA structure of the blood did not match that of Rob or his family. It was believed to have been Piper's. Lab tests on the semen would prove inconclusive as to their source because they had such a limited specimen to test.
Yeah.
The search also turned up 2 handcuff keys and a container of black water-soluble spray paint.
That black paint.
Yep. Police decided to interview those close to Rob, as in physically close, as in his neighbors. So one neighbor named Dan Johnson had recalled seeing Bob carefully clean the interior of his blue Bronco on the morning of the murder. Mr. Johnson reported that Anderson had left for a while and returned home around 2 p.m., which means that there were 4 hours that he was unaccounted for, where his whereabouts were unaccounted for.
Yeah.
According to Rob, he didn't even knock on the Strayles' door when he supposedly wanted to use the archery range. So
He's just going to go use their archery range?
Exactly.
That's weird.
Yeah. So the drive there and back would be realistically like a half hour. And that's even generous because it was not a big town. It's not like there was a ton of stoplights.
Yeah.
But when Rob arrived back at 2 p.m. to his house, he did something that didn't make sense. He started cleaning the interior and exterior of his car again in the same day.
My neighbor the other day, when it was like sleeting, he was out cleaning his car. Like washing his car like with soap and stuff. It was very odd.
It's very strange.
I was like, sir, it's raining.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't think he's a murderer though. He's nice.
Yeah.
We say hi.
Does he do it 5 hours apart?
No.
Okay.
I've never seen him do it once or twice in the same day.
Yeah, he's probably not then. The only time I ever saw that was when I picked up Ellie and she was 8 weeks old and she kept throwing up during our 3-hour drive. So I did have to clean the car a lot that day, but I don't think Rob was having puppies in his car.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. But back in the interrogation room, police confronted Rob with the handcuff keys and he admitted that they were his, but said that he did not actually own any handcuffs to go with them. Have you ever owned handcuffs with no handcuff keys?
No.
Okay, just wanted to check. So Rob also denied his neighbor Dan Johnson's account of the cleaning of the Bronco.
Of course.
Yeah. On the same day of Rob's interview, Shayna and Vance were called into the police station to view a 6-picture photograph lineup. One of the pictures was an outdated driver's license photo of Rob with long hair and a mustache. Yeah. But Shayna and Vance were unable to identify the man that had come to their house, which was frustrating because police had used an old photo, which is like very annoying. Why would they do that?
Yeah, because old photos, like especially with this whole like 10-year challenge that's going on like social media, like people look drastically different. And cutting your hair, and guys with facial hair will change you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the long hair. Like a little kid's not going to know.
No.
So the fact that they did that just harmed the case because now they can't use any photo lineup like that.
Yeah.
But 2 days later, Shayna and Vance were asked to return to the police station to view some more photos. So once again, Anderson's picture was included in the photo lineup. And this time they had a more current photo, thank goodness. So they were able to use this current photo instead with shorter hair and clean shaven. Almost immediately, Vance picked out the picture of Anderson as the man who had come to the house on July 26th. Shayna separately picked out the same photo and identified him as the mean man who took her mother.
Wow.
Yeah. The positive identification gave Sioux Falls police the evidence they needed to press charges against Anderson. At 1:30 a.m. on August 2nd, 1996, less than a week after Piper went missing, Robert Anderson was arrested while at work. He was charged with 2 counts of kidnapping. They were unable to charge Rob with murder because they lacked evidence of a body.
But 2 counts of kidnapping? What would that be?
We'll see.
Okay.
So this all happened just days after Piper went missing, and they had already identified a suspect, which was a huge accomplishment for detectives. But still, the most important thing hadn't been solved yet. Where was Piper? Mm-hmm. Hundreds of officers and volunteers searched the area around the Strails trailer looking for evidence, clues, or anything. Their search turned up nothing. However, botanist Gary Larson from South Dakota State University was about to point the investigation into a useful direction. Larson identified bits of vegetable matter taken from a toolbox at the back of the Bronco as honewort and black snake root.
How cool.
I know. That is so cool.
That's awesome.
I loved this, so I had to include it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And these 2 types of plants are only able to grow along are only known to grow along a certain wooded stretch of the Big Sioux Falls River, which was just near the small town of Baltic.
Jeez.
That is awesome science.
Forensic botany.
Yes. And imagine working in greenhouses and science your whole life, and then you literally help catch a killer through that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Okay, so police realized that it was not a coincidence that on July 29th, the day of Piper's abduction, a motorist driving near Baltic had found a torn half of a black and white t-shirt with the logo Code 0 that Piper had been wearing when she was last seen. According to court documents, he initially thought it was a referee shirt, yet when he discovered it wasn't, he threw it in the back of the car and forgot about it. He later gave it to police when he realized the shirt's significance. With the discovery of a piece of Piper's shirt, police were almost certain at that point that this is where Rob had taken her. Mm-hmm. They began searching the area and ended up finding the rest of her t-shirt beneath a small tree. Then they looked up and saw several different lengths of duct tape dangling from a branch directly above where they had found the rest of her shirt. The duct tape was wadded up together and matted with human hair. So the hair was later tested, and it was determined to be, quote, microscopically indistinguishable, end quote, from Piper's hair, which is just a fancy word of saying it was her hair.
Yeah.
A quick trigger warning, there's descriptions of sexual assault and suicide throughout the remainder of the story.
Okay.
So nearby, they found sex toys and a partially used wax candle. On one end of the duct tape matched the roll taken from Rob's Bronco. These items would later support the prosecution's argument that Rob was a dangerous sexual sadist. Mm-hmm. Rob's car also yielded hair specimens believed to have come from Piper, just as the hair from the duct tape. Stuck to the black of a folding knife recovered from Bronco were bits of cloth fiber that matched Piper's shirt. Rob went on trial the following spring for kidnapping Piper. The prosecution team, led by South Dakota's Attorney General Mark Barnett, would show the jury that the defendant had brought black paint that Monday morning and sprayed it onto the Bronco to change the appearance of the vehicle. So basically, his Bronco used to be blue. He spray painted it black the morning before the kidnapping, which is why his neighbors described the car as blue, but people near Piper's house described a black Bronco spotted.
And then the paint that they found in the back
was part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, clearly premeditated.
Mm-hmm.
During the trial, a reconstruction of events derived from the evidence, witnesses, and informant information established that Rob drove to the Strails trailer on the 29th. He handcuffed Piper, retrieved the note with his name and phone number, carried her out to the Bronco, and then drove to the thinly settled area near Baltic. Securing her to the platform of his vehicle, he gagged Piper with duct tape. He cut her shirt open with his folding knife, sexually assaulted her, and killed her, and then disposed of her body. Anderson then returned to the Strail residence and retrieved a watch he had dropped during the struggle, as well as the expended shell causing the round that Shayna reported he had fired. Mm-hmm. The second trip to the residence accounts for the Strails neighbor seeing Rob walk from the trailer to the Bronco. Mm. Dan Johnson and other witnesses placed him back at home in the Bronco, which is now a blue Bronco, by 2 p.m. that very afternoon, which means that somewhere along the way, he also stopped and washed off his black paint.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was that easy to get, like, paint off of the car.
Yeah, I think because it was water soluble, so
Yeah.
he sprayed it down with water,
Yep,
which
makes
is so
sense.
crazy. They called in experts to analyze the paint job on the truck more closely. Samples were taken and chemically tested. They found that the Bronco had been painted with the same material bought by Anderson around July 29th, and that the water-soluble spray paint found at his home could be easily applied and washed off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. On May 8th, 1997, Robert Anderson's jury found him guilty of kidnapping Piper Strayle. 2 months later, State Circuit Judge Boyd McCurchie sentenced him to life in prison in South Dakota State Penitentiary. However, this would not be the only charge he faced, which is why I mentioned that he was being charged twice, because there was something else going on. So based on further investigation and given Rob's violent and planned out attack on Piper and ability to hide her body so well, police kept digging and they discovered that Piper was not Rob's only victim. They also realized that he would have likely continued to prey on women if he hadn't been caught.
Yeah.
Police interviewed Rob's longtime friend since childhood, Jamie Hammer. Hammer said that as far back as high school, he was aware of Anderson's obsession with torturing and murdering women.
Good.
And get this. Hammer was intrigued by the idea, and the two often discussed ways in which to commit the perfect crime.
Okay. I've heard this a lot, and other podcasts have asked the same question. How do you get to that point in a friendship?
I know.
Do you just one day be like, yo, I like to kill people, and someone's like, yo, I do too. Like,
I know.
How does that conversation just happen?
I know, and what are the odds that two people just as crazy end up together?
Yes.
Like, in the same place
That's
in
what
life?
I always wonder.
I thought that too. Because at first, when I first looked at Hammer, I was like, oh my God, that's so scary for him. And then I was like, oh my God, he is one of Rob. Like, he's the same.
Yes.
So as their conversations progressed and grew more detailed over time, so did their fantasies. It wasn't long before the two men decided to act them out. Literally how it got to that, I can't even imagine.
It's wild.
Yeah. So Hammer and Anderson actually planned on abducting a woman together.
Oh, good. Yes.
Yeah.
Fun, wholesome activity.
I know. The two men got, quote, wheel poppers and placed them on the road. They waited for a victim to drive by, run over the poppers, and get a flat tire, which is like those things that they use to stop like car chases. It was then that they planned the attack the suspecting woman. Hammer didn't know it, but Anderson had already pre-selected a victim named Amy Anderson, age 26, no relation to Rob.
Okay,
different woman. In November of 1994, Amy drove over the wheel poppers on her way home from a friend's house near T, South Dakota, as Anderson planned.
That's so scary.
Yeah. Soon, her tire went flat and she pulled off the road to change it.
No.
As she reached into her trunk to get a spare tire, Anderson grabbed her and carried her off the road towards a wooded area. Luckily, Amy managed to break free and flag down a passing car that stopped to pick her up. The attempted kidnapping of Amy remained unsolved until there was a breakthrough in the case 2 years later. When Anderson was on trial for the abduction of Piper in 1996, Amy's case was brought once again to the forefront. She was able to identify Anderson in a police lineup, but he would never stand trial for the crime. At the time, he was already convicted of kidnapping Piper.
God.
Instead, another friend of Anderson's named Glenn Marcus Walker would take the brunt. As it turned out, he was also involved with Anderson and Hammer in Amy's unsuccessful abduction.
So 3
A
friends.
third one, yes.
What the heck?
I know. I don't know if he knew them back in high school. Like, maybe those two were hanging around, like, really crappy people later in life.
But just how do conversations get to this? Like, do you want to help me with a kidnapping? Like,
and how do you meet someone and know, like, that they would be into those sick things as you?
Exactly.
You know, like,
exactly.
What? So, yeah. Several years later, during his trial, he pled guilty to the offense. However, and this is the third friend.
Okay.
However, it would not be the only time he would admit that he committed crimes with Anderson. Investigators discovered that several months before Amy was attacked, Rob Anderson, I call them interchangeably, and Walker committed another more gruesome crime. So, in 1991, Larissa and Bill Demansky, who were 29, moved to South Dakota from Ukraine. They were eager to start a new life in the United States, and they both began working for the John Morrill and Company meatpacking plant. Eventually, Bill found work elsewhere, but Larissa remained at the company, mostly working the night shift. It was there when she befriended the plant's maintenance man, Robert Leroy Anderson. Yeah. Like with Hammer, Anderson confided his violent murder fantasies to his lifelong friend, Glenn Walker, who shared a common interest. So they did know each other lifelong.
We share a common interest. What?
I know. They both wanted to experience what it would be like to abduct a woman and then kill her. Literally, why? Like,
Right?
why?
That has never been something in my life that I'm like, I want to experience this.
Together, they devised an elaborate plan to kidnap Larissa. Anderson had been stalking her for several months also.
Oh, that's so scary.
Yeah. Like with Amy Anderson, they put wheel poppers in the road specifically to damage Larissa's tires, hoping to abduct her after she stopped. However, their plan did not initially work out the way they hoped. Larissa did experience many flat tires, but she never stopped her car in an isolated place, which made it difficult to abduct her because of the risk that they would get caught.
Good girl.
Yeah. The fact that she kept driving with flat tires because she was like, nope, not today, Satan.
Yup, good.
But these guys were truly psychotic, so they decided to try another method. On August 26th, Anderson approached Larissa in the parking lot where they worked. And this is in 1991, so 5 years before.
Yeah.
He held her at knife point and ordered her into his vehicle. Then Anderson and Walker drove Larissa to Lake Vermilion. When they arrived at the lake, Walker watched as Anderson dragged Larissa out of the car and raped her several times. Reportedly, Larissa pleaded desperately for her life, but Anderson ignored her. During testimony given by Walker several years after the incident, he informed police that Anderson suffocated Larissa with duct tape and then buried her remains beneath a chokecherry bush. Tragically, at the time of Larissa's death, she was approximately 6 weeks pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah. Shortly after Anderson was convicted of the kidnapping of Piper in 1997, Walker confessed to police that he was an accomplice in the abduction of Larissa.
Interesting.
Yeah. He told them that he and Anderson methodically planned and carried out the kidnapping, but he claimed that he was not involved in her rape or murder. How convenient.
But it's like, even if you're not involved, you were there. You know what I mean?
You're
like,
aiding in it happening.
Exactly.
Like,
you're not stopping it. You helped get to that point.
Yeah. He also said that he would show the police the location of Larissa's body. On May 20th of that year, Walker led police to Larissa's shallow, unmarked grave at Lake Vermilion. When they dug up her remains, they realized that portions of her skeleton were missing. A 1999 Midwest News article stated that forensic experts recovered a total of 57 items related to Larissa, which would include a tooth, a rib, bones from the left and right wrist, several fingers, a right foot and ankle, several fingernails, and jaw and throat bones.
Oh.
So truly, like, random bits of her body, which it's so sad. They also found near the grave a pair of work gloves, shell casings and bullets, her shoes, a part of her belt, jewelry, and pieces of her clothing.
I mean, at least there's the, evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Authorities were baffled as to why only part of Larissa's body was present in the grave. There were no signs that large animals disturbed the site because it was nearly covered over.
Interesting.
Yeah. Police would get their explanation from an unlikely source several months later. According to a January 20th, 2002 Aberdeen News article, Anderson's prison cellmate, Jeremy Brunner, contacted the Attorney General office in August of 1997 with information about Anderson's crimes. This is where it gets good. Jeremy would end up being extremely important in this case. He told police that Anderson bragged excessively and in great detail about the murders of Piper and Larissa during a 1-week period in which they shared a cell. Brunner was able to provide them with significant evidence which would further implicate Anderson.
Dang.
Yeah. And of course, this is like the type of person where he loved to brag about his crimes, and I'm sure he loved to talk about it because that's probably how he met people who were as crazy as him, by talking about it,
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. And if you're in prison too, what else is there to talk about?
Yeah. And it's probably easy for Brunner to just act like, another bad guy in there with him.
Yeah, or act like really, really interested and be like, oh, tell me more.
Yeah. Brunner told the authorities that Anderson admitted he was a serial killer and that he kept trophies of his victims at his grandmother's house.
At his grandma's house?
Yeah.
Oh, leave the poor innocent woman. Well, don't know if she's innocent or not, but leave the old lady out of it.
And also, how did he get 2 women to marry him?
See, that's always shocking.
Yeah. He even told Brunner the precise locations of the items. They were later found exactly where he said, tucked between the ceiling and the wall of Anderson's grandmother's basement.
Dang.
Yeah. The stash included a ring and a necklace belonging to Piper and Larissa, as well as Anderson's gun. Anderson told Brunner that he believed Walker might tell the authorities about the murders. He also had a feeling that Walker would reveal the location of Larissa's body. In order to prevent the police from discovering the identity of Larissa, if ever found, which could link the murder to him, Anderson decided to remove her skull and teeth from the shallow grave. Yeah. The remains that were exhumed were then thrown from Anderson's car window as he drove from the scene. Brummer's story explained why police only found portions of Larissa's body.
I mean, makes sense.
Yeah. And also, like, he wouldn't know any of those details, so...
because those things probably weren't released, so how else would we know?
Brummer claimed that Anderson also bragged about abducting Piper. He said that Anderson admitted to raping and strangling her before disposing of her body in the Big Sioux River. Brunner explained that the reason for this was because Anderson forgot his watch in the tent and returned to the trailer to retrieve them. During another conversation, Anderson asked Brunner to murder Walker because he distrusted him and didn't think he would remain silent about the crimes. So this is like his friend, his lifelong friend, Glenn Walker. He's asking a perfect stranger to murder him when he gets out.
Yeah.
After Brunner agreed, Anderson drew up maps for him, which was so smart of him because he literally went along with it on like another level.
Yeah. I'll do this. Oh, yeah, give me maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, give me all the evidence you got.
Exactly. So he drew up 2 maps for him. One of the maps depicted the location of Walker's house, and the other map showed where Anderson's grandmother lived. He told Brunner that in her basement he could find his gun. Even though Brunner agreed to kill Walker when he got out of prison, he had no intention of actually doing that at all. Instead, he struck a bargain with the police, exchanging the information he gathered for a shorter prison sentence, which good for you, Brunner.
Yeah.
Brunner's testimony, along with that taken from Walker and Hammer, provided to be instrumental in securing another conviction.
Yeah.
On April 6th, a jury of 8 men and 8 women quickly returned their verdict. Anderson was found guilty on 4 counts, including the rape and murder of Piper and the kidnapping and murder of Larissa. 3 days later, the same jury sentenced Anderson to death by lethal injection. Yeah. Anderson's friend Walker was tried for his crimes in March of 2000. He pled guilty to the attempted kidnapping of Amy Anderson, accessory to kidnapping, and first-degree murder and conspiracy to kidnap Larissa Demansky.
Jeez.
Yeah. He received a total of 30 consecutive years behind bars at the South Dakota State Penitentiary. In January of 2002, Anderson filed for a death sentence appeal with the South Dakota Supreme Court. Anderson complained that he was not tried separately for the abduction and murder of Larissa, nor did he get the chance to confront Shayna, as in the little girl.
Yeah, let's have this man confront a child in a murder trial. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was like, you are crazy, truly crazy.
Jeez.
And that he denied his right to make a statement to the jurors before his penalty was handed down.
Oh my God.
I know. It's like, there's literally nothing you could say. There's so much evidence against you. Like, you don't need to be talking to any juries. The Supreme Court met to discuss Anderson's appeal in March of 2002. The court would finally make their decision of May of 2003, but Anderson would never hear the final results. On March 30th, while awaiting the outcome of his appeal, Robert Leroy Anderson committed suicide. I know.
I hate when they do that.
I know.
I know it sounds bad, but like, I want them to suffer in jail.
Exactly.
I don't want them to get the easy way out.
Exactly.
And I don't say it as the easy way out. You know what I mean.
I know.
Like, you know what I'm trying to say?
In this case, it is.
Yes.
Like, not in all circumstances, but when you are a cold-blooded killer, that's what you're doing.
You deserve to rot in jail.
Yeah, and you deserve the consequences.
Yes.
And Joe Kafta of the Associated Press claimed that Anderson, quote, was not in his death row cell, but was alone in a segregated cell, quote, unquote, while he was found hanging by a sheet tied to a bar. He was placed in isolation because he was found in possession of a razor blade. It was likely that he obtained the blade to use as a weapon of self-destruction. Approximately 3 months before Anderson killed himself, his father also committed suicide. He died from a gunshot wound to his head. His father's actions may have been the catalyst which prompted Anderson to take his own life.
I mean,
yeah. Piper's husband, Vance, later stated, quote, "This is what we were after anyway. It just saved some time and effort," end quote.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's
but
like
then I feel like just
quicker closure.
I feel like justice wasn't served fully then, you know?
I think he was just choosing to look at it like, I mean, this is what we wanted. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I definitely, like, you have to choose to look at it positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? After Anderson committed suicide, the Supreme Court of South Dakota dismissed his appeal. Court documents suggested that they would have upheld Anderson's criminal conviction anyway.
Good.
Yeah. Another factor in his suicide could have been that he knew his appeal would have been denied.
Yeah.
Sadly, Piper's body was never found. But the silver lining is that Larissa's body was, and some very dangerous men were taken off the streets.
Did you ever find out why he targeted Piper?
So what I think is that he probably just saw her outside when he was driving by one day.
And just decided that's it?
Yeah, I think that it was literally just a wrong place and the wrong time on her end because she didn't have any connections with him.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's why I was wondering, because he found the other women, like, kind of stalked them. But so I was just wondering, like, why Piper? Why this person?
Yeah, I mean, also because of the Bible camp, like, maybe there was, like, a picture of them somewhere that they ran this Bible camp for kids and he saw her. Like, she did have that in the public going on, so he could have seen it somewhere. But, yeah.
For the longest time, I thought it was going to be the husband.
I know, because I thought that too, because I'm like, how did the husband know that something was up so quickly? But I think that her and her husband talked a lot, you know? So, but yeah, it's sad, but also I'm really glad that everyone got justice. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, incredible research, Nora. That was awesome.
Thanks.
That was great.
It was a crazy story.
Yeah, geez, in South Dakota of all places.
Yeah, and you know, like, I agree. And when I was looking at this, I was like, you know, maybe I'll cut out some parts that are kind of hard to read. But then it's like, no, people need the full story. Yeah. Like, this is what happened to these people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really glad that he's no longer here and neither are his creepy friends.
It's just so scary.
Yeah, it truly is.
I think the scariest crimes are the ones that are random.
Yes.
You know?
It's because it's like there's nothing you can do. Yeah. Like, there's literally nothing. Not to creep people out or anything, but that's the reality.
I gotta drive home after this in the dark.
You better text me when you get home.
I will. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you guys for all your positive messages too, with kind of what we're doing with, you know, the rest of the podcast going forward for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have any, you know, recommendations for merch, please reach out to us. We'd love them. If you have any creepy stories, any brush-ins with a serial killer or ghostly encounters, send us an email to ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com.
Please make sure to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, which is where you can now give like reviews as far as the stars. Yes, it's so awesome. We have 12 so far. Yay. But you can also review us on Apple Podcasts. Also, you guys, we did get our first bad review, and
Mama, we made it.
I know, right? That's what Lauren said. I was like, thank God for your positive attitude, because I was in a wreck when I first saw it. You can go read it for yourself, but if you do, then you will have to give us a 5-star review. That's the rule.
Yeah, that's the rule right there.
But I just want to say that if we ever talk about a case, and, you know, we share cases that are all different. And just because we talk about a case that, you know, features a blonde girl who's white does not mean that we're racist. Like, we are just sharing a case that happened. That's it. And we share a lot of different cases from a lot of different backgrounds. So just, I'm sure that people listening to this are not the ones that are going to be nasty, but...
And the premise for our thing, too, is we cover it state by state. So we're not going after the most recent cases or the most, like, you know, the cases that made the headlines. We're going over the cases in that state.
Right.
So it does kind of limit and also focus our, you know, what we're doing on a certain state.
Exactly, yeah. This one in question in particular was like, it was very similar to the Gabby Petito case. So I guess someone felt it was like racist of me, which, I mean...
if you've listened to our show, you know that's not who we are.
So anyways, please give us a 5-star review, because I'm still recovering from that. So, like, mentally. But I'm fine. I'm just saying, like, it was harsh.
No, you're fine. Yeah, it was a harsh review, but we got an outpouring of awesome listeners.
We did. It was
just
awesome.
very great.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you all. Thank you for sticking by us.
Stay scary.
Stay safe.